Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. I wish you could have been with us in the green room where Kate Myers Emery, my new best friend, and I were chit-chatting away and having a great conversation. And we hadn't even gotten the show to start, had we, Kate?
No, we're already well into this conversation.
I think that happens a lot on the Nonprofit Show, I gotta say. But we're really excited to have Kate Myers Emery. She's a senior digital communications manager at Candid, and she's going to be talking about something really important, and that is, social media when you don't have a lot of resources. And we actually threw the word in there, sparse. I mean, if that ever painted a picture, doesn't it, Kate? Sparse resources. And so Kate's going to talk to us today about how we can think about our content and our social media and what we should be talking about and how we should be using what we have when we have it. And so this is going to be a really great conversation. Another great conversation we have each and every day is really afforded to us by our presenting sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Fundraisers Friday, our new Friday episodes just dedicated to those professional fundraisers, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. I have this super fabulous group of co-hosts. They come from all parts of the country. They work in all different sectors of the nonprofit sector, and they're really cool people. I'm flying solo today with Kate, but I hope you've been able to get to know them as I have. Okay, Kate Myers Emery, Senior Digital Communications Manager for Candid. Whew, that's a lot of work, my friend. A lot of work. But first, let's back the bus up and have you explain to us what Candid does.
Yeah, well, a lot of folks listening probably already know Candid, even if the name isn't familiar. We're the product of a merger between GuideStar and Foundation Center. And Candid is a nonprofit that helps other nonprofits find funding, helps funders find nonprofits, and we get everyone the resources and the training that they need to do it better. And because of this, we have this real big picture view on what's happening in philanthropy. We have and provide the data that helps the whole sector do better.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I love that we ended with the word data, that, that's really, to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like that's your superpower, is this data collection and the dissemination of that data. Do you think that's accurate?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we are complete data nerds, and we love data and the insights that you can get from it and what you can do with that. We're all about that. And as you'll find out, it's very much like embedded into our social media strategy.
Okay, so let's go there then, because I think that's something that we don't always hear those two put together. It seems to me, Kate, we hear tell the story, paint the picture, be emotional, all of that with our social media. And I think you're going to really kind of help us to understand that there's a blend of that. And when we talk about content, let's start there, because I think back in the day, there was a sense that you'd work really hard, you'd get this content pulled together, narrative, images, video, whatever it might be, and it was one and done. You got one chance. Talk to us about repurposed content and what that should look like.
Yeah, we make so much content. We are constantly creating resources, webinars, talks, annual reports. We make brochures. We put all these things out for our audiences, and then they just, they sit in that one format. And that's really not sustainable, especially if you're at a nonprofit like Candid, where, we don't have puppies, we don't have museum collections, we don't have landscapes. We're also like a hybrid organization. So we don't even have people, because everything we're doing is digital. So we really have to get creative about where we find content. So Candid really looks to the resources we're already making, those annual reports, those educational resources, webinars. Anywhere we can, we get creative about, Could that webinar be some interesting quotes or clips for videos? Could that educational resource be broken down into individual tips that I can use? Can we make a short video talking about those? It's really leveraging everything that you have already.
I love the magical thing that you said is kind of like picking it apart and not looking at as just this one piece and it's all or nothing, but you can pick and choose. And I love the whole concept of the listicle, the top 10 things, the top 5 things, top 8 things, whatever that you can pull apart. I think that's super genius, but I also think it's something that hasn't been something we've really done, right? It seems like it might be somewhat of a new skill set for somebody to look at a piece of work and then kind of try and figure out how to reuse it.
I think it can feel a little awkward when you first start doing this type of thing, when you first start pulling these pieces of content apart, because you worked so hard to make this big presentation. You worked so hard to make this big thing. And now I'm telling you, like, hey, no, pick one good sentence from that. That's it. One thing. We have a tendency to get stuck on the big ideas, forgetting that, social media is little bites. People don't want the big idea. They want little bites so they can move on with it and learn something. So we really need to, get beyond that idea, think creatively about what's out there, and just try new things. Just try it, throw it out there, see if it sticks.
I love what you said about this journey that we take where we try and put everything in it. And it's like, if it's 10 pages or 20, I mean, it's like we're just jamming all this together. And then to reframe it into social media and understanding that it's snippets and it's bites, I think that's just a great way to be thinking about this, to kind of give yourself permission and help open things up. So when you talk about creative approaches to reusing content, how do you guide us on that? Because I thought it was interesting. You kind of pulled up some very different pieces of information, associating an annual report with maybe an ad campaign or, things that we don't always put together. Talk to us about this.
Yeah, there's that like old marketing adage that you have to see something 7 times before you'll
Yeah.
take an action. And I always like to think about that, because I think we have this idea that repetition is bad, and we're so close to the content. We know if we're repeating something. But the truth is, under 7% of your audience sees any one of your social media posts. So you need to repeat, because 93% of them didn't see it the first time around. So not only is there nothing wrong with reusing, you should be reusing things. You should be reposting. And there are creative ways that you can do this so it doesn't feel like, oh yeah, I just posted the same thing over and over and over again. Although there's nothing wrong with that. We do that regularly. You can change up the content. You can make it, if it was a positive post the first time, do this thing. You can make it negative the next time. Don't do this. There's creative ways to reuse it and get it out there to individuals.
Wow, I think it's fascinating. I mean, not only did you give us permission to be thinking this, but when we just step back and hear what you said about the small number of people that are actually going to see this at that given moment in time when you posted it, and that's even if you're tagging everything correctly too. I mean, think about that. I mean, that's a whole art in itself and another conversation for another day. But it's a really interesting thing about reapplying or reasserting a story and a journey of that. Can you help us to understand when you're thinking about this, and for some people it'll be the first time they've done this, what's that time that we're looking at? And when we think about reposting, is that within a 72-hour period or 5 days, or what does this look like to you?
It depends a little on what the content is. For
Okay.
Candid, I usually like to give about a year of breathing room. So if I posted something a year ago, I feel fine to repost it as is, maybe update the year, maybe update a few things with language. But I will repost the exact same thing. We have a post that we have done every single year, probably actually twice a year. And every single time we see 50 to 100% improvement in engagement. It's gone from being this like little post that people weren't following to now something people really love. And it's the exact same post, no edits.
I love that you shared that with us because that's bold. And for a lot of people, that'll be like, what? I mean, I never thought of that. I think that's super cool because if you really, in Candid, I love your branding and the way your art direction goes. It's very bold. It's very clean. And it's very well thought out. You can tell you don't just slap things together. So you've got to be looking at your work and saying, this is so bold and this is so out there. Will people recognize it? That would be, I think, another question that I have is, do you find that people recognize things, or is that part of the plan?
You know, in the 3 years I've been at Candid, I have not had one person say, "Oh, I've seen this before." Even though we regularly reuse content and repackage things and come up with creative ways. You know, we take a long list of 10 things and we break it into 10 individual posts. I've never had anyone say like, "Oh, I saw this 6 months ago."
Wow.
Even if they have, I'll notice same people will comment on Candid's post again and be like, "Oh, this is great information," because repetition is positive. Even if
Right.
it was something you loved the first time around, you know, one of the favorite things that we share is Candid has this graph that shows where funding comes into nonprofits, showing how important individual donors are. And that pie chart, every time we share it, people love it. They say they want to reshare it again. They'll get really excited about it and the data. So, you know, you just got to reuse stuff. You got to reshare. You got to keep the repetition going and get comfortable with it.
Yeah. We had a viewer just write in. I've been repurposing my social content with small tweaks lately, and it's been great for the page and my mental health. Love that. I
Yeah.
thank you for that comment because yeah, the stress and the duress that we have of feeding the beast and getting, content uploaded and then tracking it and figuring out how it's working, how it's not working. It's arduous. And I think, a lot of a lot of people work in by themselves in this because for so many nonprofits, this hasn't been a path that they've invested in. And so you don't have a huge team behind you, I guess is what I'm saying. You're kind of doing this on your own for a lot of organizations. Um, this is a fascinating conversation that we're having with you. And I want to move a little bit into, using the experiment word, which really freaks a lot of people out, and myself included. Help us to like not hyperventilate when we think about this. Because to me, I'm like, oh, how do you experiment? Are you going to pull down your whole organization by experimenting? Or are you going to end up being thought of as dumb or irrelevant? How do we think about this?
Yeah, you know, the way I've always thought about experimentation is that it's just a necessary part of social media. You know, social media is always changing, the algorithms shift, the post sizes change, the
Mhm.
platforms change, and we always need to be adjusting our content and tactics to make sure we're reaching the goals that we set out to do. And so the way that Candid does that is by running experiments. And so we run 2 to 3 month experiments on and off throughout the year to test new platforms, to test new content types, to, figure out how to do things better. One of the big ones that we did was deciding whether or not we wanted to jump into short form video. So if we wanted to do TikTok and Reels and YouTube Shorts.
Right.
And so we said, for 3 months, we're going to go all in. We're going to create a video a day. We're going to see if we can get double the engagement of static posts. We're going to, make sure it's not taking up too much staff time because, again, mental health is important. We don't want to take up too much of our staff time.
Yeah.
And, at the end of that 3 month period, we said, we got the engagement. It's great, but it takes too much staff time. So we need to rethink it. And we ended up doing video at a much lesser rate. So we only do 2 videos instead of 5. But you get data that you can actually take action on. And then if someone asks, hey, why aren't you on Threads more actively? We can say, well, we did a 3-month experiment on Threads to see if it was worth the investment. It is not worth the investment for our organization right now, and that is why we're not more active. You get real answers to questions. You're not just wondering about things. And you do need to have comfort with failing. You do need to have that, safety within your organization that you can take those risks. But I think having conversations that are very much built on, we'll have this data, we can answer this question so that when that board member says, hey, why aren't we on TikTok? I have the data to show, this is why we are, or this is why we aren't.
Right. I loved, so when I first saw this word experiment, I thought it was like a really loose. And I love that you've gone into it almost, maybe using the word test, where you're saying, okay, here's the time frame, here's the commitment, this is what we're going to measure. I love that you had a goal of measuring what would be the increase of engagement. Some really serious questions, as opposed to, well, let's just try this at 2:00 instead of 3:00 and see what happens, right? But it seems to me that if you can spend a little bit of time up front laying out what that experiment's going to be, and what you're going to measure, you're going to have better information.
Yes, I think there does need to be that thought period about what's the goal? What am I trying to do? There does need to be thought about how much time am I going to invest in this to get real answers without, throwing away too much time in case it doesn't work. I think it's also smart to think about, if it doesn't work, what will I do with all this content I made? How can I reuse it for other things? So we are very intentional. We do make sure that things are reaching goals, that they fit with what we're trying to do, that we can take them on as staff, and that we have the time and capacity. So it's not just done, for fun. There's very clear intention. There's very clear outcomes that we want to see.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. And I loved what you said about, doing something every day for 3 months. That's an incredible commitment. I know we do the nonprofit show every day, and we starting our 6th year in a couple of weeks. I know how hard a daily action is, but the grind will help inform so much of what you're doing. It's really exciting. It's a really exciting commitment to be thinking this way. Good for you. Are you, before we move on to my next question, are you really thinking that 3-month period for a test is a good idea, or was that just one example? Like, what does that look like for you when you're testing a new platform?
Yeah, for Candid, we usually aim about 2 to 3 months for an experiment. That is what I found is the best for actually getting some results. So some real data. If you just throw out 1 or 2 things, you just don't have enough data. So that's enough time to really weave it in, make sure the audience gets it, make sure they can make a decision of if they like it or not. But then we're not overly investing in something.
Right.
So that's what I would do. I know some organizations that are have more resources on the social media teams might do longer, but for us that seems to be the magic number.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, we're going to get into that even more, but I love kind of framing that up, because when you hear the word experiment and then, we're talking about content, I think a lot of times, going back to your very first comment when we first started, that one and done mentality, so I think that's a really interesting way to kind of look at things. And so that does navigate us into this whole picture of expending time and energy. And you gave us that 3-month window, which I love. But my follow-up question to this, Kate, is that so many things are changing so quickly. And how do we determine if maybe the results that we had in the beginning are changing, or they've amplified, or we should put more resources? Like, how do we start looking at this? Because to me, it's ever changing.
It is, social media is a fascinating world to be in because we can have something that works really well one week and then the platforms shift and that strategy is just gone and you can't use that anymore. I think a great example is last year, Candid had a really big goal of getting more link clicks, particularly from LinkedIn. And then LinkedIn changed the way links are viewed, making it harder to get link clicks. And so we had to readjust our entire strategy halfway through the year to make sure we were still getting this goal. So when we're talking about social media, we're talking about the long game. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. You're in it for the long haul.
Okay.
When I'm looking to see if there's growth, I'm looking year over year. I'm looking, what happened in February of last year and how does that compare to this year? I'm also taking into account how the platforms are shifting. When I share out results, I will share, hey, this is what happened on Meta this month. Like, this is important context because it really changed the analytics, or this was what was happening, in the broader social sector. It's changing the way that people are interacting with things. A great example is that Candid saw really fascinating engagement around election week this past November that we've never had before because people were looking for, escapist content that week. They didn't want anything serious. And so we had all this like fun content that got so much attention that I never would have anticipated. So, it really is the long game. It's not really worrying week to week. You're going to have a bad week. It's okay. You might even have a bad month. That's okay. I want to see that, year over year growth. I want to see over the course of a year, are we seeing, 20% growth in engagement and followers? Like, that's really good for where we are in social media right now. We're not looking for these, you see big numbers, like some large organization will be like, oh, we had a 380% increase in engagement over the year. And it's like, okay, but that's not doable. Like, small continual growth is what we want to see.
Right. Well, I would argue that's just a generally a good way to operate your business, right? I mean, same thing with like fundraising or, growth of programming or services. Some of these numbers that people, fall in love with, they are not sustainable and sometimes they're not healthy. They imperil an organization when you have that much of an explosive change. So I love that you're, slow and steady wins the day approach. I think that's really smart. How often do you feel that you need to tie in your efforts to the demographics of what platforms are out there? And so I'm thinking of like Facebook, that's now skewing much older. And so the professional capacity and interest on LinkedIn seems so much stronger. And I would think for an organization like Candid, which is, um, so rarefied in terms of the information and the place that you hold in our sector. Do you spend time on that, looking at these demographic shifts?
I don't know that we're looking specifically at like, the percent of women versus men and, where people are coming from in terms of, the state they're in or age or anything like that. But we do pay close attention to what content is doing well on each platform and have shifted our strategies to match that. So, for example, Candid's Instagram is much more about quick education you can get on the platform. It's, easy tips. It's things you can scroll through and save, a lot of like shareable content. Versus LinkedIn, we're much more going for like the thought leadership, the data points, the interesting article that you're going to want to share with a big group of people. It is a different feel for the different platforms. And that came very much organically off of looking at what each of those audiences was looking at. We initially started sharing pretty much the same content on both. And then over the course of the last year, Candid has divided that out to be more specific.
I love that you shared that with us because I think that's brilliant. I think that that's um, going back to the very first point of our conversation, in repurposing content doesn't just mean putting the exact same thing on all your different platforms, right? We need to be more strategic than that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's very small shifts. It's
Okay.
not even a big, oh, I'm going to have to overhaul this entire post. It's just, all right, Instagram's a little bit more casual.
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn is a little bit more buttoned up.
Mm-hmm.
So, what candid content will look like is just small shifts in language. It's framing things slightly different about what we think the use might be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all it is. It's not, we don't have the capacity to have, individual content tactics for each. We're
Right.
making small shifts for each one that will be slightly more tailored to that audience.
Right. So let me ask a question, and this is like maybe a little bit of a curveball question, but when I'm thinking about managing the content and the art direction, um, explain to me what you all do, because it seems to me that this is a big conflict for a lot of organizations, that are concerned about, do they work or outsource with a graphic designer or somebody, and then they've got the content manager, like, but yeah, wait, we can't wait for that, or that blend. Where do you see you and your team and other nonprofits, frankly, taking this job description, right? Are your content managers actually doing the creation, or are they working with graphic designers, or how is this all going together?
Yeah. So, Candid only has one social media manager. That's me. We don't have a
Okay.
team of social media people. We have one other person who does some of the content creation, and we do have a paid intern that helps with some of our content creation. But we don't have this like team of people who are doing all these things. Most
Yeah.
of the content is created by, you know, most of it's by me, and then a little bit by these two other individuals,
Mhm.
and we create all of it on our own. So we are the graphic designers, we're the video editors, we are pulling it all together, and we're using Canva. Canva is
Okay.
huge. We love Canva.
Okay. I didn't want to, like, pull their name into it, but it seems to me like everybody's using it. And so yeah, that's good to know. That's really good to know. We've had several people write in our comments section that they're enjoying this conversation. And some of them have just come in and they're wondering where they can find it. We've done more than 1,200 episodes of the Nonprofit Show. You can find all of our archived um, episodes. Were on 5 days a week. And so you can simply go to thenonprofitshow.com, or you can speak into your smart speaker and pull us up on YouTube. There are a lot of different ways to find this, because this is really valuable information. And I love that, Candid. I feel like you're in the trenches with the rest of us, Kate, when you said, it's just me and I'm wearing all these different hats and I'm trying to do all this. And, you Candid does such an important thing for our sector. There's got to be, as we finish up our conversation, a tremendous amount of responsibility, or a sense that you can't get things wrong. Is that true, or is that just my opinion, or my observation, I should say?
I think it's a good observation, but I think, the stakes for any nonprofit are really high, especially right now, like
Yeah.
getting things right, showing your impact, making every single post count. If only 7% of your audience is seeing something, it needs to count when they see it. At Candid, we are really careful about having other people check content. If I'm putting something out about data in particular, I'm having our research team check it. I'm having other eyes on it. I'm making sure that we're all in agreement. This is the messaging that we want to send. So, it is a really important thing. I think people think of social media sometimes as still being this like throwaway, this like,
Yeah.
oh, you just take photos of food.
Mhm.
But it's the primary news place for a lot of people, especially younger generations. Like they're going to Instagram for their news.
Mhm.
So it is really important to take the time to really think through things intentionally, to be critical about what the messaging is, even if it's fun, even if it is a super fun video, there's got to be that intention by it. So yeah, we do really think about what we're putting out and what that impact will be.
I love it. Well, this has been fabulous to have you with us. We mentioned in the green room it would go by quickly, and it has. Our time is up, but we've really enjoyed this, Kate, because you've just brought together a bunch of great ideas and given us permission to be thinking about this in a different way. And I agree with you. Organizations that are not leaning in on this are going to be left behind. They're being left behind, not going to be. They are. So it's been a pleasure to have Kate Myers-Emery on today, Senior Digital Communications Manager. I'm going to add extraordinaire because you're doing a fabulous job at Candid, and you can learn so much about what Candid does for our sector at their site, candid.org. They have a tremendous wealth of information that I don't care what you do in the nonprofit sector, there's going to be information in there that will help you sell and tell your story. It's really a powerful, powerful tool in any toolbox for the nonprofit sector. You know, we have tools in our toolbox, and they include our presenting sponsors. They are Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Fundraisers Friday, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. These are the folks that join us day in and day out as we explore so many of these things. Kate, this has really been fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
It's been a lot of fun. You taught me a lot, and I've really loved everything you've said. And I think the thing that I loved most is that you really womaned up and said, "Look, you know, your shop is small, and you're doing all these things, and you're getting it right," which is really exciting. So, thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun. Hey, everybody, as we end each and every episode of the Nonprofit Show, we leave with this message. And it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well. Thanks, everyone. See you again.